I win the election, we will immediately begin a brand new Trump economic boom. Vote Trump and your incomes will soar, your net worth will skyrocket. Groceries, cars, everything. We're going to get the prices down.
President Trump made a lot of promises on the campaign trail, but he didn't talk to voters or warn them that their 401ks would take a nosedive and that tariffs would make almost everything more expensive. CNN's chief data analyst Harry Enten is joining us now. Hello, Harry. You're going to run the numbers for us. I am very curious to see what you found out about all of this. So let's start first with how unique the drop in the market is under Trump, because I have heard from some Republicans that say this is pretty normal stuff.
Yeah, if this is pretty normal stuff, I'd like to know what not normal stuff is. If this is a boom, I'd like to know what a bust is. I mean, my goodness gracious. We'll talk about it. I mean, talk about the S&P 500. It's dropped 15% under Donald Trump's presidency. The S&P 500 has been collecting data essentially since 1957. It's been an index. I went back and I looked for drops of 15% with a president who was inheriting a bull market. There's only one dude on your screen. It's Donald John Trump. He is the only one to see a drop of 15% this soon into his presidency in the S&P 500 after inheriting a bull market. In fact, there's only one other president who has seen a drop of 15% this early on in his presidency, and that was George W. Bush back in 2001. But of course, he was in fact inheriting the dot-com bubble bust. And so this is truly unique, where you come in with a bull market and then boom, right through the floor, Donald Trump, the S&P 500 dropping already 15%, Jessica.
And so there's the market, but then there's the chance of broader economic problems. And that chance is right. That possibility is rising, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. A chance of a recession, something none of us want to see. And what's the chance of a recession? I mean, J.P. Morgan, look at this, now up to 60%. It was 40% in early March. How about Goldman Sachs? It was 20% in early March. We're now up to 35%. Basically, at this point, you average all these different companies together who put forecasts out on the chance of a recession. It's about 50-50, way up from where we were at the beginning of this year. Poly market, where you can trade, was, I think, a 30% chance at the beginning of the year. Now it's 60%. No bueno. What stays in the stock market, what happens in the stock market may not stay in the stock market, Jessica.
And Americans do seem to be having an issue with how Trump is handling the economy right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these numbers, you wouldn't be surprised to see Donald Trump's net approval rating. Compare it now to where it was at this point in the first term. In the first term, he was above water at plus 5 points. Where is he now? He's way underwater. He is swimming with the fishes. Look at this. He is the worst ever for a president at this point in a term, on record at minus 12 points. I just never thought I would see the day, because as we were hinting at the beginning, Trump promised an economic boom. Voters bought into it, but so far they ain't liking what they're seeing.
Jimmy Carter's probably the best example of a president getting taken down by the economy recently. How long did it take 39th president to go into negative territory on the economy?
Yeah, always when you think of economic bust, you think of Jimmy Carter, the recession that occurred under him, right? How long did it take him to get a negative net approval rating on the economy? It took him 11 months. It took him all the way until December 77, January of 78. Donald Trump already has a net negative approval rating only 2 months. 2 months into this term, he is the fastest on record to go negative. And comparing to Carter, I mean, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that 2 is a lower number than 11. Carter took a while. Trump, right on in. The voters have turned right against him.
I also want to talk about the protests that we saw across the country yesterday. Those protests were protesting the Trump administration. They generated a lot of interest online. What did you find?
Yeah, so, you know, when we entered the Trump presidency the second time around, there really wasn't that resistance, right? Not what we saw in January of 2017. Well, now we're starting to see what we saw in January of 2017. Look at this, Jessica. This is Google searches for protests. Get this, up 1,200% versus a year ago. It was the highest level on Saturday, and I went back into the record books. You know I like to do that, Jessica Dean. And what did we see? We see that the number of folks who are searching for protests, interested in going out in those protests, is finally matching what we saw in January of 2017, if not exceeding it. If the Democratic resistance seemed to be nowhere at the start of this Trump presidency, with approval ratings for Democrats down at their lowest level ever, all of a sudden Donald Trump has supercharged it, and the protests and the resistance is on.
All right. Harry Enten walking us through the numbers as he always does. We appreciate it.
Thank you.